In today's fast-paced world, we often relocate for work, leaving our hometowns behind for places that promise brighter futures. Companies offer attractive packages and relocation assistance. Some provide transportation while others send you to remote locations. Today's real incident was shared by Scott, who experienced it back in 2018. Scott's financial situation wasn't great. His father worked odd jobs to support the family, his mother was a homemaker, and Scott had just graduated high school. He was around 19 or 20 when he and his friends received a job offer. His father encouraged him, saying, "Son, it's time to step up and help support the family." Scott was from a small town in Missouri, and the job offer came from Oregon. Understanding he couldn't continue being a burden on his father, and knowing his family needed his support, he left with 4 friends. It took them 3 days by bus to reach Oregon. Upon arrival, they first visited the company office. A management representative took them to their accommodations, a 3-story house with a family living on the ground floor, a vacant first floor, and the second floor where they would stay. The second floor had several rooms, many already occupied by other employees. But there was one room no one used, and people seemed hesitant to even pass by it. Scott immediately noticed the strange emptiness of this room. When the 4 friends entered it, Scott felt an immediate sense of negativity, though he kept this to himself. The next day they began work. The first day consisted entirely of training, marketing procedures, company operations, and job responsibilities. The young men were thrilled, believing they'd found the perfect opportunity. Being young and energetic, they enjoyed staying together. After a couple of nights, Saturday arrived and the company had given them the day off. While hanging out in their room, they decided to celebrate. "It's Saturday, let's have some fun," one suggested. Everyone contributed $20, and Scott went downstairs to buy supplies for their little party. He returned with chips, soda, cookies, and powdered donuts. They enjoyed themselves, gorging on snacks. Afterwards, Scott suggested, "Let's go for a walk. We haven't even explored the neighborhood yet." The 4 friends ventured out, discovering a path behind their apartment building. Scott noticed a large drainage ditch flowing in front of them. On the far side of the ditch lay a cemetery, and on their side stood a crematorium. 3 of the friends lagged behind while Scott walked ahead. Everyone was full from the snacks and walking leisurely. Scott became fixated on the unusual sight of a crematorium, cemetery, and drainage ditch all together, something he'd never seen before. Lost in thought, he was startled when his friend suddenly came up behind him and grabbed his shoulder. "Hey man, you staring so hard, you planning to jump in?" Scott responded, "Are you crazy? Let's get out of here. Something feels off." The atmosphere felt desolate and eerie. They returned directly to their apartment, unaware of what had followed them back and how it would soon upend their lives. That very night, Scott began feeling strange. His sleep became disturbed, and he tossed and turned while his 3 friends slept soundly. Around 1 a.m., thinking, "I have work in the morning and I'm not feeling well," he put his phone aside. The moment he closed his eyes, it felt like someone entered the room and sat directly on his chest. The pressure was immense. Suddenly, it felt as if something tore into his body and entered it. Scott tried desperately to move but couldn't. After a while, he managed to get up and looked around, seeing nothing but feeling a desperate need for fresh air. He walked to the balcony, opened the door, and saw a massive pine tree before him with birds perched atop it, unusual for that time of night. Confused by this sight, he went back inside and noticed one of his friends was awake. "What's wrong? Can't sleep?" the friend asked. Scott replied, "I feel like I'm getting sick, man." His friend retrieved Tylenol from his bag, broke one in half, and said, "Take this and get some rest. It'll help with the fever." Scott took the medicine and lay down, but spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Repeatedly, he sensed someone moving around the room but didn't know what to do. At least having his friends nearby provided some comfort. When morning came and his friends awoke, they saw Scott's condition had deteriorated. "Don't go to work today. We'll let the office know. Just rest," they advised. Scott could feel he was getting worse and agreed. His friend prepared breakfast, left the remaining Tylenol, and instructed him to take it after eating. "You'll feel better soon," he promised before the 3 left the room. Now alone, Scott kept replaying the previous night's events in his mind. As the medicine began taking effect, he felt he should rest, knowing sleep helps reduce fever. Suddenly he felt intensely cold. He quickly closed the balcony door and locked the room from inside. Feeling chilled to the bone, Scott pulled out his blanket and then grabbed his 3 friends' blankets as well, covering himself with all 4. "I'm lying under 4 blankets and still freezing," he would later recall. Shortly after lying down, he heard what sounded like someone ringing the front gate. As he opened his eyes, he saw entities sitting on top of him. He couldn't tell if they were male or female, but it seemed like two beings watching him and pinning him down. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't push off the blankets. Scott later admitted, "I lost control of my bowels. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I tried to remember the Lord's Prayer but couldn't recall the words. I just kept repeating, 'God help me,' until I finally managed to throw off the blankets." He got up and approached the gate, looking around. The front gate buzzer continued ringing loudly, and then the balcony door began rattling as if someone were trying to enter. Scott thought, "At least someone could legitimately be at the front gate since I locked it from inside. But no one could be at the balcony, there's nothing out there." He backed away, grabbed his phone, and called his friends, planning to tell them what was happening in their room. They didn't answer. He called the management contact and urgently requested to speak with his friends, saying he wasn't feeling well. After a few minutes, the management person reached his friends. "Pick up your phone," Scott told them when they called back. When they answered, Scott explained everything. Something had overwhelmed him just as it had the previous night, though he hadn't mentioned it then. His health was deteriorating rapidly. His friends dismissed his concerns. "You have a fever and must be dreaming these things. We've been in that room too and there's nothing there." When Scott checked the gate again, it opened normally, leaving him confused. Was it truly his imagination or had he really seen something? The situation weighed heavily on him, more than he realized. That evening when his friends returned, he insisted, "I'm telling the truth. What happened to me today could happen to anyone. Something seriously wrong is going on here." His friends responded, "Look, if you're homesick and don't want to work, just take some money from us and go home. But don't make excuses." Scott tried to reason with them. "I didn't leave home for this. I came to support my parents. Please understand, this happened to me and it could happen to any of you. There's something wrong with this place." His friends remained skeptical. "You're not well. Just rest. Everything will be fine." They began preparing dinner and using their phones, eventually falling asleep around 11 p.m. Scott still couldn't sleep. He'd been resting all day while his friends had returned exhausted from work. Around 1 a.m., while playing a game on his phone, he began feeling ill again. He closed his eyes and covered himself with a blanket. His three friends slept nearby. Suddenly, he heard violent kicking at the balcony door. Yesterday someone had been knocking, but tonight they seemed determined to break it down. Scott woke his friends. "Look, listen. Someone's at the door. I told you." His friends were irritated. "Have you lost your mind? There's nobody there. Are you so desperate to go home that you're making up stories to convince us something's wrong with this room?" One friend took pity on Scott, got up and said, "Look, there's no one there. Calm down. It's all in your head. You're probably getting fever again. Take some medicine." Once more, Scott couldn't sleep. By morning, his condition had worsened. His friend suggested he stay and rest, but Scott refused. "I won't stay in this room alone. I'll go to the office no matter how I feel. I'd rather be there than here." The company car arrived to pick them up. Remarkably, once they drove about a mile away from the building, Scott suddenly felt better. His fever subsided and he felt completely normal. Everyone was stunned by his rapid recovery. He went to work and completed his shift without issue. But when he returned to the room that evening, within 2 hours his health deteriorated again. Scott begged one of his friends, "Take me to a doctor. I'm getting much worse." The other roommates agreed they should all go. When they reached the doctor's office and his temperature was checked, it registered 103 degrees Fahrenheit. The doctor was alarmed. "Where are his family members? This isn't a minor fever. He needs immediate care." Scott received a strong medication dose and was instructed to go straight home, eat something light and get plenty of rest. No work until he recovered. They returned to the apartment around 11 p.m., and everyone went to sleep except Scott, who remained awake until 1 a.m., then 1:30 a.m., then 2 a.m. Suddenly he heard a tinkling sound in the room. Someone, or something, approached his bed and whispered something unintelligible in his ear. Scott jumped up so violently he noticed his friends were sleeping as if unconscious. He tried waking them, but for 2 full minutes none responded. When they finally stirred, their patience had run out. "This routine again? He's gone crazy. Let's send him home. He clearly doesn't want to work." The others said, "Take your medicine first. Lie down. We'll stay awake until you fall asleep." They watched until Scott dozed off, then fell asleep themselves. In the morning, Scott woke to find his 3 friends preparing for work. "Don't even think about going to the office," they warned. There's a heavy workload right now and you'll just exhaust yourself. Your health will get worse and none of us can afford hospital bills. After they left for work, Scott called his mother and explained everything. This is happening to me and I don't know what to do, he told her. His mother suggested he speak with his father. Scott hesitated, knowing his father was practical-minded and wouldn't believe in supernatural events. When they spoke, his father was dismissive. You just got there. You're young and probably can't handle the work. If you want to come home, then come. If you need money, borrow from your friends and I'll pay them back when you get here. Scott tried desperately to explain that he'd gone there specifically to work. Why would he make excuses? His father wouldn't listen and simply repeated, "Son, if you're not well, come home. We'll find you work closer to home. You only went to Oregon because of your friends." Scott resigned himself to his situation. As soon as the guys get back, I'll tell them I'm going home tomorrow, he decided. When his friends returned at 6:30 p.m., Scott told them his plans. There's a bus tomorrow. I'm heading home. I have some money but I need to borrow a bit more. To his surprise, one friend replied, "You won't go alone. We're coming with you." Confused, Scott asked what had changed. The friends explained that the company had promised food allowances but hadn't delivered, making them suspect the company might withhold their salaries too. Scott was relieved not to be traveling alone. An hour later, management called saying someone would bring their food allowance. A representative arrived and gave each of them $250, instructing them to report to work the following day. But their trust was broken. They decided to leave, caught the bus the next day and called management saying, "Our personal items are still in the room. You can collect them. We won't be working for you. If you're dishonest about small expenses, you'll probably cheat us on salary too." Management simply replied, "Fine, someone else will take your place." The group returned to their respective homes and began looking for new work. But strange things continued happening to Scott. He later confessed something he'd never shared before. "When I came home after about 4 days, my thoughts became disturbing. Whenever I saw any woman, even young girls, I had inappropriate thoughts. I couldn't understand what was happening to my mind." For months later, Scott confided in a cousin, "I don't know why my thinking has become so twisted. I look at every woman with perverted thoughts." His cousin dismissed it. "That's normal at your age. You're idle and an empty mind is the devil's workshop." No further possession-like activities occurred at home. 1 year passed, then 2, 3, 4. By 2023, Scott's father was aging and finding work increasingly difficult. "Start looking for a job," he told Scott. "I can't support everything much longer." A friend mentioned a position in Oregon, and Scott had forgotten the traumatic events of 2018. "Let's check it out," Scott agreed, though he added, "but not in the same area as before." His friend arranged the interview, Scott was hired, and once again he made the 3-day journey to Oregon. New company, same building, same room. The landlord recognized him. "Hey, you're back." This time, Scott had brought only one of the original friends. The other 2 had settled elsewhere. When shown to their accommodations, Scott immediately recognized it. "This is the same room we stayed in before." They started work the next day, but that night the events began again. Both were lying in the room. Scott's friend had fallen asleep while Scott played a game on his phone. Through a gap in the balcony curtains, he glimpsed the pine tree outside, and saw what appeared to be a woman peering in before quickly withdrawing. Scott thought he must be imagining things and looked again. The woman reappeared, then retreated. Terrified that the same phenomena were recurring, he woke his friend. "Get up. Someone's out there." His friend glanced sleepily and said, "There's nobody there." Scott insisted, "Look again." This time his friend saw it too, a face peering in before disappearing. Both men were so shaken they slept in the same bed that night. The next morning, as Scott prepared to shower, his friend noticed multiple scratch marks all over his body, on his waist, shoulders, arms, and legs. "Dude, where did all these cuts come from?" Scott examined himself, horrified. "What's happening to me?" The friend insisted they forget work. Scott called home. "Mom, this is happening again. I have cuts all over my body. Please tell Dad." Scott's mother relayed the information to his father. "Something's happening to Scott there. He's getting cuts on his body." Though traditionally skeptical of supernatural claims, his father knew of a local spiritual advisor. Before he could explain the situation, the advisor said, "You've come about your son. You sent him back to die. That poor boy has been suffering for 4 years. Your prayers saved him last time, but I'm not sure he'll return alive now." Shocked, the father explained what was happening to his son. "This isn't just happening to him. Much worse is coming. the advisor warned. He instructed Scott's father, call him immediately. Tell him to buy a Bible and read Psalm 91 every morning and evening. A tragedy occurred in that room. When Scott's father asked what tragedy, the advisor replied, have you ever asked your son why the room that was empty 4 years ago is still vacant now? Ask him, and tell both boys to move at least a mile away from that room before you speak. The energy there is too dangerous. Scott's father called immediately, don't go to work today. Tell them you're not feeling well. Get out of that room right now and go somewhere at least a mile away, then call me back. Scott was confused by the urgency but took his friend and drove 2 miles away before calling back. His father tried to remain calm. The advisor says there's negative energy in that building. Buy a Bible today, read Psalm 91 4 times each morning and evening. You'll be fine. Scott's father had actually brought religious items with him. The advisor had warned that if Scott didn't return home safely this time, he might not return at all. That evening, Scott began reading the psalm as instructed, which seemed to calm things temporarily. But at 2 to 3 a.m., multiple entities entered the room, violently shaking his bed. Rustling sounds filled the room though nothing was visible. Scott felt his legs moving involuntarily. Terrified, he grabbed the Bible and began reading Psalm 91 again, which quieted the disturbances. In the morning he called his father. Dad, it kept happening all night. You said everything would be fine. While talking, Scott suddenly felt a sharp pain in his back as if bitten. Hey, he asked his friend, did something bite me? When his friend checked, he found claw marks on Scott's back with blood flowing from the wounds. Tell your dad what just happened, his friend urged. Scott's father rushed to the spiritual advisor and explained the situation. The advisor revealed, these aren't ordinary spirits. They won't release him easily. After a moment of concentration he continued, there are 2 spirits. No, 3. And the third is the most powerful, causing the most harm to your son. If you want to save him, tell him to keep reading Psalm 91 continuously. Don't stop and don't leave that room. If they leave, these entities will kill them. Scott's father called with urgent instructions. Don't leave the room. Tell work you're extremely ill. I'm coming now. The advisor provided protective amulets and tools, sending Scott's father on the first available flight. After a full day of travel, he reached the room, gave Scott the protective items and immediately booked return tickets for the next day. When they arrived at the spiritual advisor's place, he examined the friend and said, you don't have any attachments. Go home and wear this protection just in case. After the friend left, the advisor told Scott's father, to save your son, we need to perform a cleansing ritual. It will take all my energy. The necessary materials were gathered, and Scott was seated within a sacred circle. As the ritual began, entities started manifesting through Scott. A woman's voice emerged, he ate sweets but didn't share with us. He stood watching us in the cemetery, enjoying himself. Then a man's voice, I died in that room. No one saved me. I won't leave him. Another entity spoke, save me. I won't release him. We'll take him away. The advisor confronted them. Who are you? Why have you attached to this young man? The female entity responded first, I was murdered, betrayed by my husband. The advisor asked the second entity, who revealed, I committed suicide in that room. I made a terrible mistake. I can't find peace. I'll take him with me. Finally, the advisor addressed the third entity. And you? It answered, I was at the cemetery. That's my home. He came wandering by after eating sweets. When his friend startled him, I attached to his shoulder. All 3 of you must leave now or you will be destroyed, the advisor commanded. The entities resisted. I won't go. I won't go. I won't go, different voices shouted. The advisor sprinkled blessed water and oil while instructing his assistant to restrain Scott. A cross was placed on Scott's forehead, after which he became calm. The ritual continued for 90 minutes before Scott was finally freed. Even after his liberation from these entities, Scott shared in his recording, to this day I still see things. I have nightmares. I don't feel completely free. I sense those entities are still around me. I visit the spiritual advisor every year for ongoing treatment. His only mistake? I ate those powdered donuts then walked by a place of death. The landlord knew what would happen. That's why he insisted on giving us that same room. Today, Scott's condition has improved. His parents take care of him and he's working again. I don't press for too many details, believing that digging too deeply into someone's traumatic past can sometimes make their situation worse. When Scott asked why he was the only victim when his friends had also eaten sweets, the spiritual advisor explained, Everyone's energetic field has different strengths and weaknesses. Yours was already vulnerable, and when your friend startled you by grabbing your shoulder, the entity seized the opportunity, seeing you as the easiest target.